Welcome back to the Red Dice Diaries RPG podcast. I'm your host, John, and today I'm going to talk about one of my favourite things that I learnt from Old School Essentials / Necrotic Gnome books, specifically their adventure books. But first of all, let's cue that music. So what I'm going to talk about in today's episode relates specifically to how some of the information is laid out in the Necrotic Gnome adventures. And this is something I first of all noticed in the adventure Winter's Daughter, written by Gavin Norman, which finds you involved in the machinations of a Fey princess and her lost love. And don't worry if you've not played it, I'm not going to get into terribly large amounts of spoilers during this episode. And I'll say in advance that I'm looking at one of the sort of older printings of it. There have been some sort of reworkings and amendments in later editions. So if you're looking at your book and it doesn't correspond to exactly what I've got here, you've probably just got a different printing, that's all. But specifically what I want to talk about in this short episode is the way in which scenic descriptions and also pertinent information about NPCs was written down to make it more accessible and easy to find for the GM. And this is a style I'm pleased to say that Necrotic Gnome has carried forward in the numerous adventures that they have published since Winter's Daughter for the Old School Essentials Sister. So I'm going to look here at a scene called Sacrifice at the Withing Stones, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And I believe this scene was actually removed from later printings, so you don't have to worry about spoilers or anything like that. And effectively it involves the PCs coming across the Droon, this mysterious sect of druidic-like nature priests about to sacrifice someone in a stone circle. So the way this is organised, we have a small paragraph for the stone circle, and then we have another small paragraph for the hooded men, the young woman, and the ritual itself. And these have a sort of greyed barred shading on it, so it's easy to see. And each page seems to have just one or two encounters on, with a very prominent title at the top. So again, it's very easy upon flicking through the adventure to find quickly what you're looking for without having to go to an index or a contents page or stuff like that. Now, the way that Gavin's chosen to present this information, so let's look at the stone circle, the description of the place where the sacrifice is actually going ahead. We have the title, Stone Circle, then underneath in bold text it says Rune Etched. Very simple description, but instantly it's telling you something about that scene, that these stone circles have runes etched into them. Then in brackets next to that we have just a little bit of elaboration, nothing too over the top. It says Eldritch markings which reflect moonlight. Then after that we have a second sentence that says mossy in bold text, and in brackets clad with dangling beards. And that's it. That's all you get for the stone circle. But to be honest, what more do you really need? When you glance at this information on the page, the words rune-etched and mossy leap out at you because the text is emboldened, and instantly with just those two sort of little phrases, you've got a picture building in your mind about what this scene looks like without having to read through loads of purple prose or flavour text. And if you do need a little bit more detail, it's there for you in the bracketed text. But again, it doesn't go on for a ridiculously long time. So let's have a look at how this same technique was taken forward to the two hooded men, the mysterious Droon who are conducting the sacrifice. So again, we get the title, Two Hooded Men, in a grey bar, very easy to see. We then, this time, because obviously there's a slightly more detail needed, because you're going to be interacting with them, we get four little sentences to describe them. In bold text, we have mumbling incantations, in an odd tongue, in brackets, knife held aloft, silver, curved, black cloaks and hoods, and finally, golden talks, in the form of owls. And obviously the text where I've sort of spoken it a little bit more quietly there is the text that's in brackets, and the text I spoke a little bit more loudly is what's written in bold. So if you look at this page without seeing anything else, even if you ignore the bracketed text, you know that these two hooded men are mumbling incantations, holding knives aloft. They're clad in black cloaks and they have golden torques or necklaces on. And again, you could pretty much run with that. If you need a little bit more information, again, it's there in the bracketed text for you. But again, it takes like 4 lines rather than like having paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs explaining how this scene is going down. And if you combine this description with the stone circle description earlier on, pretty much you get straight away you get an idea of what's going on. Now, because these are NPCs and they might have a bit more interaction, there's a little bit more detail underneath. 4 bullet points. There's reaction, which, you know, how they react to the PCs, trying to engage with them. Names, the names of the 2 people. Know, if they know any pertinent information. And possessions, any treasure they have on them. But again, each of these is a bullet point with the title, reaction, names, know and possessions in emboldened text, and a couple of sentences at most after it. If we look at the next one, which is one young woman, again, grey bar text, we have bound to the central stone, wild-eyed, ecstatic, possibly under the influence of a drug or a potion, face daubed with glowing blue paint, clad in black, lacy gown, red hair, braided, and again we get a reaction, her name, and here we have a little note saying treat her as normal human in terms of combat stats. And that tells you again everything you need to know about the woman that's going to be sacrificed. We get a little box out with the combat stats for the Droon in case the players engage, and we get a final little section called the ritual, where we get 3 bullet points: duration, how long it takes if it's left to run its course; culmination, what happens when it reaches its climax; and aftermath, what occurs after it. And all of this stuff is fitted neatly, and I don't mean like crammed in with tiny text or anything like that you need to get a magnifying glass app to look at. It's all fairly spaced out and neatly done and fits on a single A5 page, and you have got an entire potentially multifaceted scene there that your player characters can interact with when they try and work out what's going on with this sacrifice. Can they free the woman? Can they engage with the Droon? What are the Droon doing this for? And it's all very, very neatly compacted. This style, as I've said earlier, is carried forward in most of the Necrotic Gnome products, and it's something that really struck me the first time I read Winter's Daughter, because I've read a lot of tabletop adventures, and I found in the past that unless they have like a really good index or a contents page, preferably both, looking at you, White Wolf, then it can sometimes be difficult to find stuff as the game's progressing, particularly if you're a GM doing something out of a book and you're having to flip between it back and forth. You end up putting post-it notes in or index cards or, heaven forbid, folding in the corner of your book's pages and stuff like that. Or you end up looking for a cheat sheet or something just to enable you to find the information you want to run the game at a reasonable pace without having to constantly pause and and ah and look for the information. But this Necrotic Gnome method of doing it really struck me, because I've run Winter's Daughter and it was one of the easiest adventures that I've ever run, just to pick up the book and run it straight out of the book without me having to do like loads of prep and put bookmarks in and notes and stuff like that. I literally read through the book a couple of times, and it's not a massive book. Like I say, it's sort of A5 size and it's 24 pages with a few maps and pictures in it, so it's not massive, but I literally read through it a couple of times, picked it up and ran it using the book for my players in one of my games I did a while back, and it all went really well. They seemed to enjoy it. Obviously I had to do a little bit of ad-libbing because that's part of the beauty and joy of RPGs, but everything I needed to know pretty much as relates to the adventure itself, rather than like bizarre things my player characters decided to do, was in that book and was easily accessible. And this is a sort of tactic that I've tried to carry forward when I write my own stuff, making it very easy to find adventure hooks and information as you're reading through. It's something I hope to continue doing when and if I get around to publishing more stuff, but also just when I'm making my own notes for a game session, because yeah, it might all be in my mind now when I'm writing it or I'm doing my prep a couple of days before the session, but it's easy with work and stuff like that to forget little bits and pieces and for information to fall through the cracks while you're engaged in other things, and you find yourself turning up on the game night and someone will go, oh, what about this? And you sort of, oh, I can't actually remember what I said for that, and you either end up improving, which fine if you're comfortable with that, but if you've already done the prep, why not just make the prep easy to find stuff in, or you end up sort of stumbling over yourself and having to search through a lot of material. Whereas using this sort of way of phrasing your information and presenting it as sort of, as far as I'm concerned, sort of pioneered by Necrotic Gnome, it can really make it very easy for you to run your material as is with a minimal of flipping backwards and forwards, and I'm a great fan of that. So that's it for this episode. If you've read any of the Necrotic Gnome adventures and you've had a look at the layout, let me know what you think. Are you a fan, not a fan? Do you love the big wadges of text, or do you just want to talk about something to do with tabletop RPGs? Either way is fine. You can get in touch with us a few different ways by leaving a voicemail message on either SpeakPipe or Anchor, link in the description of this episode, or if you want to send us an email, you can send it to rddrpgpodcast@gmail.com. So until we see you again, take care, stay safe, and whatever you're playing, have fun.